Hi guys, I'm Heidi Argis. I'm a microbiologist at Stanford, and I also do a lot of crafting, knitting, and sewing in my spare time. So recently I've been making these fabric masks that are very useful if you want to go outside at this time and go to the market during the coronavirus. They're useful if you happen to be sick but don't have any symptoms. It'll prevent you from making other people sick. It'll also provide some barriers against other people potentially making you sick. So these are the masks that I've been making. I've had the most success with this pattern. It's fitted so it fits the shape of your face really well. I've also added a wire for a nose bridge. And I've chosen my fabric carefully to make sure it'll block as many particles as possible. So today I'm going to do a video demonstration of how to make this. I've had a lot of people ask questions on how I've been making them. So I'll walk you through choosing fabric, cutting out the pattern, sewing the pattern, and then finally I'll show you at the end how to wear it properly and how to put it on properly and then take it off safely when you come back from your excursion. So with that, we'll get started with fabric selection. So for fabric selection, a lot of the fabrics that are recommended are cotton because it's easy to wash and clean and can be autoclaved. Another recommended fabric was tea towels because the weave on tea towels is a little bit thicker, so it blocks more particles. I've been playing around with some of this. I'm not even sure where I got it. It's a dust rag, and I washed it in really hot water just to make sure it could survive a washing, and it did. So I might try lining some with this. This is important anytime when you're experimenting with materials that you don't know. It's important to wash them first and use these on masks for your friends and family where you know that they will wash them too. If you're making them for healthcare workers, double check. Sometimes healthcare workers need masks that can be autoclaved, which means they can be heated to an even higher temperature to be sterilized. And I'm not sure if some of these unorthodox materials will hold up to that. Another material I was looking at was this reusable cleaning pad. And again, I washed these as well. I washed all of the fabrics I was going to be using in hot water and dried them on a hot setting just to make sure that they would survive normal washing. So one thing to consider when picking fabrics is how see-through and how thick the fabrics are. So to do this, I hold the fabric up to a light, and you can kind of see that, especially in that like coronavirus looking guy, you can see that there's a lot of light coming directly through this fabric. Let's see if I don't know if I can quite get a good picture of that. Oh, you can kind of see it there. There's a lot of like pinpoints of light coming straight through. So I would not use this fabric as a single layer. We can test it doubled up to see what it looks like. So this is a double fabric. And that is a little bit better. A lot of patterns are calling for doubled cotton, which isn't too bad. I like to go one step further, and if I was using doubled cotton, I would use it with a layer of tea towel. So let me apologize, I'm having trouble holding the camera as well as demonstrating. But anyway, I'll just put two of these layers together. So here's a tea towel on its own. There's still some light coming straight through. And then the tea towel combined with the cotton is a little bit better. So if you play around with mixing different fabrics and making sure that they block a lot of light. You wouldn't want any fabric that's kind of a looser knit because it would, or a looser weave because it would allow more light through, which means it would allow more air through, and be less effective at blocking particles. All right, I want to take a little bit of time to tell you about the pattern I'm using. It's the let me remember correctly, it's the AB mask for a nurse, designed by a nurse, and take you and get a little bit closer with my tripod. Let's see. So this pattern has a center fold, so you put this on the center of your, put this on the center, the fold of your fabric, has some lines designated for the chin tuck and for the nose tuck. I have found that my first mask was a little bit loose on me, so I made these tucks a little bit bigger, and that seemed to solve the problem. There's also these notches on the edges that mark the pleats. And this mask pattern I found online, and I'll put the website in the comments. And then there was a PDF that's kind of hidden in the comment section of this pattern. The original pattern was a drawn out pattern that's the designer took a picture of and uploaded, and then somebody kindly made it into a PDF printable, and you can find that in the comments. Now I wanted to walk you through how to cut out the pattern. So I chose this fabric, and I'm going to put this fabric in the front, and I'm going to line this fabric with a tea towel fabric in the middle. So I'm going to need 2 of these and 1 of this. So first I'm going to iron my fabric, and then kind of eyeball this to see what's the best way to lay it out to get as many masks as possible. So I think I can make full mask. I fold it, so fold the fabric, here, and since I'm trying to be as economic as possible, I want to use up all of the fabric that I possibly can. I'm going to get it so that I have it so right along the edge, and this is up into the corner. Some pins and pin the pattern onto the fabric. Oops. Like that. Now I'm going to get my scissors, my fabric scissors, and cut around the edge of the pattern. And I already have one of these cut out here. If you didn't already have one cut out, you could imagine folding this in half again and pinning the pattern onto 4 layers of fabric, and then you could cut out 2 of these at a time if you're wanting to be as efficient with your time as possible. Since I already have one cut out, I just need another one for the inside, and I need to cut the tea towel lining. have this cut now, and before I take the pattern off, I want to make some notches on the pattern for the chin and the nose tuck. And I'm just cutting through my fabric so I know where these are later. I'm going to do the same thing for each of these marks over on the side. And then take Alright, so I have my fabric pieces cut out, and I'm going to line them up as best I can. And then again, I'll use just a couple of pins to hold all of the fabric pieces together. And this fabric, or this pattern, says to have it has 1/2 inch seam allowances, which means you sew 1/2 inch away. I've been doing a little bit more than that because I find it works well. So I'm just going to sew all the way around. Alright, I have sewed all the way around, and I apologize for the little squeak that my sewing machine has. Been trying to troubleshoot how to fix that without much success, so we'll just have to deal with it. Okay, so I've sewed all the way around. Now the next step, I can take the pins out because they're being held in place by the stitches now, all of the layers of fabric. So the next step is to tuck the nose and the chin and the nose bridges. So if you can see, there's the lines that are the guides that I made for tucking on the nose and on the chin. So I'm going to fold this in half, and since mine is the same on the front and back, it doesn't matter, but if you had a front or a back, make sure to fold it towards the back so that your seam will be on the back. And as best as possible, line up those notches. And then we will put this. And I'm actually going to follow this imaginary line where my notch is down to where the seam crosses over, because I don't need to be sewing up above that seam. So now I'm just going to sew, double check and make sure that's all flat. Yeah, So I'm going to just sew in this diagonal line until I reach the fold and back stitch and then take it out. I'm going to do the same thing on the nose side for the nose tuck. All right. So now I've got those tucked in. Forgot there was something, I probably should have put the pleats in first. I typically do that, but I didn't this time. So we're going to go ahead and put the pleats in now as well. So this is the front side. You can see that right now because the seam is, all this extra stuff will be on the back. So the pleats, remember, we marked with these grooves here. So find what's the top side. So this is the chin tuck and this one was the nose tuck. The nose tuck's a little bit smaller. So I'm going to find the top side. And when I make the pleats, let's see, I've been doing just simple folded over pleats. So I line up the top notch that I cut with the notch below it, and then put a pin in, and just do the same thing. And these don't have to be super perfect. But if you get the point is just to bunch up the fabric so that it'll form a nice seal on the side of your face. So now that I have that, I'm going to go ahead and sew in these pleats. And I've had some people just sew right over the pins. Sometimes I do. I've also had bad luck where my needle has hit the pin. Ooh, stuck. 1 second, let me fix that. And broke. So I try to take the pins out if I can, but I couldn't quite there. So anyhow, that's what the pleats look like, and I'll remove the pins now. I'm going to do the pleats quickly on the other side. So just remember that they fold over on the top. And again, it doesn't, like if you screwed it up and folded the pleats the other way, it wouldn't make that big of a difference. If you're a perfectionist like me, just double check. So folding this pleat. And then folding the last pleats. Double check and make sure this is still recording. My battery's getting low, so I should. So now I have the pleats sewn in, and these seams on the chin and the nose, and it'll look something like this when you wear it. But anyhow, now we have it all sewn in. I think now we need to trim the edges. And I trim fairly close to the seam, probably like 1/8 of an inch away, I want to say. It's less than 1/4 of an inch from the seam. But you don't want to get too close to the seam, you don't want to risk hitting the seam, because that would suck. Alright, so now I have the mask. I'm going to get rid of these floppy bits here, and I'm going to do that. If you have a pinking scissors, you can go ahead and cut it with the pinking scissors. If you don't, just use a regular scissors. So now I want to show you how to make what's called bias tape, and that's basically a flat piece of fabric that's folded over on each side, and then once you iron those sides, you fold it in half. And this is what will end up going on the edge of the mask. So to make bias tape, first make a long strip of tape. Strip of fabric. These need to be at least 40 inches long for the top and bottom ones, and then the side ones don't have to be that long. They just have to be a few inches long enough to cover the side. So this is the part that I find the most annoying, is making these long strips, but basically it just takes a lot of patience, folding over and ironing. If you sew more than I do and use bias tapes a lot, you might have a tool that helps you make the bias tapes and fold it over. I'm just using my fingers. Right. And the great thing about this is it doesn't have to be super perfect, it just has to hold long enough for you to get it to the machine and sew it. My fabric, I just washed it this morning in really hot water, so I had forgotten to put it in my load of fabrics for the masks earlier this week, so it's still a little bit damp, so that's why that's giving off so much steam. Right, so I'm getting towards the edge. And in some other options, instead of doing this with the fabric, if you had like 1-inch satin ribbon, you could simply fold that in half and use that as the bias tape. That's what I did on, I have that example out still. That's what I did on this one. Just simply folded the ribbon in half and used it as the bias tape. I don't have any of that ribbon anymore, so that's why I'm going back to the fabric. And this is a fabric that it's not thick enough for a mask. You can see it's pretty see-through, and that's not one that you'd want to use because it wouldn't block much, but it's perfect for the edging and the ties. Right, so now that I have this all folded in, what I can do now is fold it in half and press with the iron so that the seams hold. All right, now I want to show you how to put a wire into the nose. So we have two tucks. The nose one's the one that's going to be the smaller of the two. The other one's the chin tuck. So if you fold it out, makes sense because your chin juts out, so you need the protection around your chin. Your nose just juts out a little bit, so you need less protection. All right, so I'm going to I had on hand some braided wire, picture wire, and also some, it says number 24. I don't know if that means it's 24 gauge wire or not. But I have found that using one of each of these works pretty well. The picture wire is not quite strong enough on its own. It helps provide support. I've also seen people using pipe cleaners or like craft wire, like pipe craft wire. So what I'm going to do now is bend each of these in just as an added protection, so hopefully they don't come out. And I want to give it a shot of twisting these together. Don't always do this, but I think it'll help provide strength. All right, so they're twisted together fairly well. You want to line it up in the middle of the nose bridge. And I'm going to go ahead and try to get it as close to the top as possible. Let me put something underneath it so in case I miss it doesn't glue my counter. So I'm going to try to get it basically as close to on top of this seam as I can. And I'm just going to try to hot glue it in place. So the wire is going to want to be difficult and not hot glue super well. And I'm going to take one of these pieces. This is kind of a suede-like fabric, and I'm going to trim it down a bit. And I'm going to use this to provide more surface area, so it'll hopefully glue better. Let's see. And again, and use common sense. Obviously, be careful with the hot glue. It is hot. Can burn you. Let's see. So I'm just going to keep inching across like this, using this fabric as a tape to hold the wire in place. And this wire, it's not necessary, especially if you wear glasses. Your glasses should just hold the mask down and make a pretty good seal on its own. But if you don't wear glasses, this will help you mold your mask to your nose. Right, so that's putting the wire in. And now we can sew the bias tape along the edge. Now it's time to attach the bias tape. You can see I have this little piece, the little pieces of bias tape, and I also have the 40-inch long pieces. So the little pieces will go on the edge and they'll be wrapped around the side of the mask like so. And I use these clothespins to help hold in place. And this is a lot of layers of fabric, so be gentle with your machines, and hopefully they can get through it all. Mine had a little bit of trouble at the beginning. I had to help guide it along. Okay, so do the same thing with the other side. And now to put the long ones on, you need to do is fold this in half to find the middle, and then line the middle up with the middle in here. So I'm doing the one with the nose bridge first. It has the wire. I'm going to put clothespin on each edge. And this one you'll have to be really careful to try to sew around the wire and not through it. And start at the very edge of the I-cord. Shove the wire up as far into the crease as I can to try to help allow the sewing to work. Okay. Right in here there's a bump where the wire is, so I'm just going to go with the hand wheel through here, and I think I'm even just going to jump over this danger part. There we go. Okay, so I'm through that, and do a whiz through. Oops. Got stuck. What's happening? So anyway, my sewing machine's having issues, but you get the idea. You sew bias tape on and sew it all the way to the end. And then once I'm at the end, I roll this twice and sew a seam going this way so these don't fray. And you do the same thing with the bottom, and it's going to be even easier on the bottom because you don't have the wire to deal with. So that's how you put the bias tape on. All right, while I'm down here, I want to make one note about the wire. So this is the first time I've actually tried putting the wire in this way. I had this idea and I thought it would work really well to put it underneath the bias tape and then sew the bias tape on top. Had a little bit of an issue. There's a wire poking out here that I'm going to go back and fix. And also the bias tape wasn't quite long enough, so I missed it here. So for this one, I'm just going to go back and hand sew in there because I don't want to risk hitting the wire with my sewing machine needle. But one of the things that I might do in the future is I might put the bias tape on first and then put the wire on the way we did. So put the wire on with this layer of fabric over it, hot glued on the inside. And I think that would solve all those problems. You'd be able to easily sew on the bias tape and also get the wire, and you'd have the protective fabric layer on top of the wire between the wire and your face. Right, now I've shown you how to make the masks. I want to show you how to properly put them on and take them off. So you can go out to the market or the post office or wherever, wear your mask properly and safely, and then come home and take it off safely. So one of the primary benefits of wearing a mask is if you happen to be sick without symptoms, you're preventing it from getting on others. So it's important to cover up your nose and mouth. You put the mask on like so, and then, so this is before you even leave the house. Put your mask on, tie it up top, and then tie this one as well. I like to tie the chin, and if I have a ponytail, I like to tie it even above the ponytail too. It helps secure and create a good, really good seal. So I have it tied now. I have a pretty good seal under my chin, along the sides, and with my nose. If you're super concerned about getting somebody being sick, like if you're taking care of a neighbor who's sick with coronavirus, I would recommend wearing safety glasses too, because the coronavirus can also enter through your eyes. But say I'm all masked up. Now the important part when you go outside is to not mess with your mask. Don't fiddle with it, don't touch it, don't touch your eyes. If you have a nose itch, just leave it. If your nose is dripping, let it drip. Just leave it and don't touch it. So I'm gonna go outside, not touch my mask at all, and then demonstrate what would happen when I come back in. All right, I'm back. So I've presumably been out to the post office or the market, and perhaps my hands, perhaps I had to touch the food on the shelves or anything with my hands. So my hands are potentially contaminated. You want to treat them like they're contaminated. So don't touch anything with your hands. With that exception, you need to get your mask off. And the way to get the mask off is just to be really careful and take untie the straps. And you see how my fingers are nowhere near my nose and mouth and eyes. So take the mask off. And I am going to hang my mask here and quarantine it for a while. If your mask is not dirty, if your nose wasn't running, and your mask is still fairly clean, the virus only lives on surfaces for 3 days. I only go to the grocery store once a week at the most, so I'm just going to leave this and not touch it for that amount of time until I need it again. And after a week, any virus that happened to be there, if there is any there, it would not be active anymore. So now, if you notice, I haven't touched anything with my hands except the straps to get my mask off. Now I'm going to go wash my hands. One more note. This is kind of a PS. I realized I forgot to tell you how to wash your mask if it does happen to be dirty. So mine's not dirty. I'm just leaving it in quarantine. I'm not going to touch it for a few days. But if it were dirty, if say I have this perpetually sniffy, runny nose going on right now. So if I had gotten my runny nose all inside the mask, I would want to wash it. So to wash it, you can wash it in your sink with hot soapy water, or you can throw it in the laundry and wash it with hot soapy water. That's really all you need to do. Just wash it properly with hot soapy water. I haven't tested it too much with the wire and with washing, so if you guys have any issues with the wire when you're washing it, let me know. It might be best to just hand wash it with hot soapy water and then hang it to let it dry. It should be fine in the machine, but like I said, I haven't tested that yet, so I'll keep you posted. And with that, I'm going to go wash my hands again. Bye.